offers general advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. Every person's legal situation is unique. You should contact your attorney before taking any legal action related to the subjects discussed in this program. Welcome to Aging Insight, the only show dedicated to your elder care concerns and your resource for learning about how to manage your health, housing, financial, and legal needs. This is live call-in featuring John Ross and Lisa Schulmeyer.
You are checking out, share it
for the Ark-La-Tex.
Share it with your friends.
Aging Insight is dedicated to helping you navigate the challenges and blessing of growing older. So call in and ask your questions. The number is 903-791. Now here are your hosts, John Ross and Lisa Schulmeyer.
Welcome to Aging Insight, everybody. This is your host, John Ross, here live in the studio on Aging Insight. We're here every weekend just to make sure that we can get you the kind of information that we think that you might need to know about your health, your housing, your financial, your legal needs out there. If you want to get through the aging process, you want to do it without becoming a burden on your friends, and you want to do it without spending all your life in a nursing home, and you want to do it before you die, you know you can.
That's amazing. You know, how many mixed rumors are out there, and so we get the privilege to come on the air every Saturday here on 98.7 radio, and also on Facebook to share knowledge and to take questions and correct any misunderstandings. So,
that's right.
But we don't do it alone. We help make sure we studio in the time to share that knowledge. And so I want to give a special thanks to Edgewood Manor, the Barnett Agency, Derrickson Memorial Hospice, Riverview Behavioral Health, Calhoun Creek Estates, St. Michael's Hospital, Federal Credit Union, Twin City Rehab, and the Inspirations of New Boston, Texas.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank all of them. They make the program work. They make it where we can come on here. And like Lisa mentioned, we're live in the studio. So if you have a question, you can give us a shout at 903-793-1071. We'll be here to answer questions. We are also broadcasting on Facebook Live. If you have not gotten on Facebook and gone to the Ross and Schulmeyer Facebook page or the Aging Insight Facebook page and given us a like out there, you need to do that. But if you want to see what it looks like, if you want to see what radio looks like,
yes,
instead of just
radio look like,
yeah, instead of just what does it sound like, you can go and watch live and I noticed like a lot of the ESPN stuff, a lot of their TV programs and things, their radio programs, they now broadcast on TV.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
3 people sitting in front of microphones, basically radio shows that are now have turned into a TV show. So
and now we're cutting edge. We've done a little bit of the same.
That's right. Maybe one of the major markets will call us and say, "John, Lisa, we need you on our program."
Yeah, maybe, but I'm just so glad we're here in our community to be able to help. There's such a lack of expertise, and so it's it feels good. I get the good, the warm fuzzies.
That's
when
right.
I can help folks. So, and I got some warm fuzzies this week, John. Every week, I guarantee you, if every week there is some place where we are out speaking in the community.
Either you or me or Kristen or Klein, one of our attorneys is out there in the community speaking every week, and in many cases, multiple people, multiple times in multiple locations.
Yeah. So I had the privilege on Thursday morning to speak at our monthly Eggs and Issues breakfast here in the Texarkana area and for Trinity Church. That is on the 4th Thursday of every month, except November and December. Everybody's busy with holidays in November and December.
No sense in trying to do it.
But otherwise, the 4th Thursday of the month, come on out to Trinity Baptist Church on the Arkansas side at 8:30. We start early.
Yeah.
But we feed you. We get a nice breakfast, and and we, so we had a nice crowd. Even though it was spring break, I didn't realize, but for many of our folks that listen to our information that need it, they're not on spring break.
Yeah, the difference between a spring break week and a not spring break week is not much different. Yeah. I mean, I didn't personally notice any difference. For me, I still had to show up for work.
Yeah, but so gave a talk to that group, and John actually kind of took something we did on the radio a few weeks ago, and kind of talked to. We talked about how important drafting is, and that sloppy drafting and using the wrong words.
We talked about that on the radio a couple of weeks ago.
So I actually kind of expand on that and talk about how the Trinity.
Yeah, and I actually I spoke in both Hugh Springs. Was it the teachers? I think it was the Teachers Association in Hugh Springs. And then did another speech in Linden, maybe? Or Henderson. I spoke in Henderson. That's where I spoke in Henderson, given some tax tips for seniors and some stuff they need to know out there. And I guess that's kind of the point, Lisa, is that there is, the reason we do so many of these speaking engagements, because it's not just about wills and trusts. It's not just about what happens when you go to the nursing home. There's so many different things between taxes and real estate issues and government benefit programs
and retirement benefit issues.
Financial investments, even down to things like house design and what medical procedures are available and physical fitness and things like that. I mean, there's just so many different things that you need to know out there, which is why we try to get out there and get you this information.
Well, yeah, that's one reason. The other reason is, here's a secret. It gets us out of the office.
Hey, there you go.
We get to go out there and mingle with people and get out of that office for a little bit.
That's right. Now, despite all of that, you would think that as many times as we're out there communicating with the people, doing our radio show, doing our television shows on Channel 10, our podcast, Reaching Insight Magazine, we think with all of these different resources out in the community, where people would stop walking into the office and be quite so uninformed.
Well, at least they show up at the right place.
They have gotten that part right.
But John, still, so very, very frequently, I have a brand new person that I'm meeting, and they sit down at the table and they say, "Well, it's time for me to get a will."
Man, it's always about the will.
I came here to get a will.
And just this week, if you were to look at my calendar, I go through roughly about 6 to 8 appointments a day, 6 days or 5 days a week, if I'm not out there speaking. And if you look through and you look at why did these people call? What did they want to know about when they came in? 9 times out of 10, it's my mom's getting older and hasn't done a will. We're getting older and haven't done a will.
We just one of us has just gotten a diagnosis and we haven't done a will.
Right, we've done a will, but it's old and we want you to look at it. But it's always about wills, and all of that to say that Lisa, I would say that not only is the will, frankly, not very important in a person's general situation, at least as it relates to their aging and their health and their retirement. I mean, it's completely irrelevant.
While you're breathing.
While you're
above ground, your will is of no relevancy, no consequence, no legal effect, no nothing. It's just a piece of paper.
That's right. I promise everybody that's listening right now, you personally will never care whether or not you have a will.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's just not going to matter to you, and it matters to somebody else. So on the one hand, it has no impact on you necessarily while you're alive, but more importantly, this is a toolbox full of tools, and all of these different tools could be used to accomplish a goal. Some of those tools are going to be much more efficient than others.
Right. The old saying of if the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And so, have you heard that before?
I have. But even within the hammer, you've got, for example, we've probably.
Oh, okay. Let's see how tool savvy.
Well, no, I'm just saying that we've all at some point in time maybe wanted to hang something on the wall, and we just had one of those little tack nails, and we didn't want to bother going out to the garage to get the real hammer, so we just used the backside of a stapler, or your boot heel, or something like that. That's a clunky. Maybe it will accomplish the job, maybe.
Yeah.
It also might bend the nail. It might bust a hole in the wall. It might be completely inappropriate. On the other hand, you could have a hammer, just a regular hammer, and that'll accomplish the job better as long as you don't slam your thumb under it.
Right. So, well, and I think, John, part of the deal is as lay people, as clients and community members who they've been doing their own thing, they've been teaching school, they've been making paper at the mill, they've been working on cars, they've been doing all the things they do in their life, and really the only tool I think most of them have really heard of very detailed is they always hear about a will.
Sure, and I think some we can blame this on some Hollywood out there. Anytime you're watching movies and stuff like that, there's somebody's dying, then there's always going to be some session. What does the will say? And then they'll have the reading of the will. That's my favorite.
Oh yeah, that's some very melodramatic scenes in the movies. But in my 20 years of law practice, I have never ever once sat in a room with a decedent's will with the grieving family in front of me and read it.
Right.
Never.
Read it to everybody. That is a complete myth. That is Hollywood fantasy. That's just not the way things go. But you get the Hollywood myth of everything about the person's death is related to their will. You hear it even from people I know. Financial advisors. You hear it from people on the radio and stuff. Dave Ramsey, for example.
Dave Ramsey, I know one time he was talking about it, and he said, and he did talk about the statistics that very few people had wills, and he was like, get a will, otherwise it's just a redneck mess. Yeah. And I did appreciate that, and I did appreciate the fact that he was basically telling people they needed to do some planning.
Right, but he didn't say go do some planning.
Right.
He said go get a will. And in fact, the reality of it is that the will is a very clunky, inappropriate way for most people to use as their primary planning vehicle. Now, I'm not saying having a will is not important in some situations, but as the primary vehicle, as the engine that runs the whole deal, it is not appropriate for most people. It's trying to hammer that nail in with
the boot heel,
or the back side of the stapler, when right next to you are real hammers and big pneumatic hammers and all kinds of cool stuff out there that can be much more efficient, safe, better protected, accomplish the job quicker, easier, cheaper, all these different things. And yet, and of course, there's probably somebody else to blame for the commonality of the will out there.
I was thinking that.
Yeah.
That would be attorneys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You got to blame some of the attorneys out there as well, who, frankly, they know about it as much as about this stuff as the listeners out there, and have not stayed well versed on will alternatives or estate planning alternatives, and
or the challenges that seniors face that have while they're breathing and have nothing to do with their will.
That's exactly right. So what we thought we would do today is we would talk about some of the problems with the wills, what a will does. Because if you know what a will does, then you're also going to start understanding what a will doesn't do. and some of the problems that go along with it, and some of the alternatives out there. So that's going to be today's topic. If you have any questions, again, you can give us a call. You can comment on the Facebook page or whatever you want to do. Just if you've got questions, we'll answer them. But in the meantime, we're going to take a quick break. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Insight. Call 903-793-1071 to ask your question.
All right, so we got my headphones hung on my. Yeah, it's not near as smooth when you're just doing it on the Facebook. You can see all the other stuff. You're getting tangled in your wires. You're trying to run the board all at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think there was an episode of The Simpsons. When you talk about Hollywood, there's an episode of The Simpsons. We know they had their lawyer on that show.
Lionel Hutz.
Okay. And I think there was an episode where there was a reading of a will, and The Simpsons are always setting up, satire of other things, and they had the wife, and they had the mistress, and they had the lawyer reading the will, and it was played for gags.
Sure.
But a lot of people, it's a familiar enough scenario that you could play it for gags. I mean, as far as the Hollywood thing goes.
Yeah, I actually had somebody call the office here recently. They called the office and wanted to know how much we charged to do a reading of the will. And I mean, that's just not a thing. I mean, it really is. It's pure Hollywood.
Now, a less scrupulous lawyer would have said, "Hey, a couple $100, come on in," but that's not what we said. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but it does permeate out there throughout everything. It's out there all over the place, and you just never know. I mean, you just never know what people are thinking or doing. But yeah, we did not charge them for them to come into the office where we read them their own will that they had in their possession and could have read before they showed up. That is not what makes the will official. There's some other stuff that has to happen for that will to become official. Which of course we're going to talk about once we get back from these last two breaks. About one more minute before we get back live on the radio. Appreciate all you watching out there, and I appreciate y'all sharing the post and giving us the likes and stuff. That's awesome. We appreciate it. It's kind of neat. On the radio we have no idea who's listening. But
sometimes we find out later in the week when people come up to us. But with the Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook Live is a little thing right there on my phone that I can see, and it tells me how many of y'all are watching, and so we appreciate it. All right, so we got one more commercial. It's going to be over 20 seconds, and then we're going to be back on the air. So, Lisa, you can bring it in this time.
All right.
Still the most chosen, the regional leader, the home of heart care care, Krista St. Michael. Have a question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
All right, welcome back everyone to Aging Insight. This is Lisa Scholmeyer here live in the studio, and I am here with John Ross. This week, I guess I was out last week. I forgot about that, but I'm back.
Yeah. So, but you're back here. You're back with us now, and we're gonna be talking about some stuff. But we did actually just get we got a question on our Facebook Live page right there during the break. I thought we'd go ahead and answer it. The person on the Facebook Live wanted to know if you could require a will if you're owner financing a piece of property. So for example, I got somebody that's going to buy a piece of property from me,
like a contract for deed,
and they can't get, for example, they can't get a loan at the bank or something like that. So I've decided, well, I'll just essentially owner finance it, and they'll make payments to me over time. And once they make all the payments, then the property will be theirs. And then the question is, could I require them to make a will or something? The answer is yes, you could. The different question is, should you? And the answer to that one is no.
Yes, you could require it, but then I think that they could change it regardless. And then no, there are other ways to protect your property that you're financing besides a will. Again, very clunky way to do that.
Yeah, you know what most banks will actually require, if a bank has some concerns that the person might die before they complete the purchase, most banks will require them to get term life insurance policy and name the bank as the beneficiary.
Right.
And so you could do actually, that would be a much safer way, would be to require them to get a life insurance policy that names you as the primary beneficiary for at least up to the unpaid balance of the loan on the property.
Well, and another way to do that, John, frankly, to even avoid that, because I recently had a family call and their 80-year-old parent was about to get a 30-year mortgage, which I was finding hard to imagine, but regardless, you know, a lot of seller financing or owner financing is done by a contract for deed type situation. And, you know, the way to handle that is essentially the buyer, quote, is essentially renting the property from you. But once they pay rent for X number of months or years, then they get the deed to the property. So it's a way to make sure that ownership still remains with the seller, but yet the buyer, there's a contract that says that they pay their rent on time for X number of years, then the property, the deed, the buyer will, the seller will deed the property to that renter / buyer. But it's very important that all of that be papered correctly. We see a lot of kitchen table agreements on that. It's not papered correctly.
And this is kind of really to what the will does and what it doesn't do. Is so, for example, if this person said, okay, well, I'm going to find this property, but I'm make the buyer do a will, and the will says that at their death they're going to leave the property back to me if it's unpaid, or they're going to leave a certain amount of their estate to me to cover the loan, or something like that, whatever the case may be. But the thing is, if everything that person has, let's say that their bank accounts and everything are jointly owned with somebody, or beneficiaries in the IRA. You can even name a beneficiary on a piece of property, like a house. And if they've done any of those things, all of those bypass the will.
Right. The will would not control any asset that you are looking to, to protect you from a financial issue. The thing is, you always want to be a secured creditor. If you're selling property and you've given them a deed and you've done a mortgage and all that, you definitely want to have all that papered properly at the courthouse, because in probate matters, there are other people that get paid before you would.
That's right.
So they'll say get it. The same. Some hospital might get it, funeral home might get it. Never know.
That's right, and that's actually why we're going to be talking about this. Today's is why you should be seeing real quick here. The will doesn't do what you think it's going to do, and that's why it's such a bad tool. But anyway, we have to take a break. We'll be back after the bottom of the hour news break. Stick around. I got tied up in my sunglasses again. But yeah, that's actually a very good question. There are several other ways to accomplish that. Like I said, life insurance, doing contracts for deeds. But I'll tell you, here's probably my best advice when it comes to this. Here's what I've often told people. If I've got somebody that can't get a loan from a bank, then that means the bank has decided that they're not loan worthy. And if they're not loan worthy to a bank who's in the business of loaning money,
who makes money by loaning money and loan money.
Yeah, they'd like to loan money,
Yeah.
but they won't do it to this person. Then you probably shouldn't replace your judgment for that of the bank and say, well, I'm in a better position. Now, there's obviously always circumstances.
There could be family, there could be, a close friends or relations that you know of and you want to help out and you understand why the bank won't loan the money. Yeah, that's always the first thing is don't carry the note if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
I mean, let them get bank financing. And that way it's not your problem.
That's right. But yeah, she comments that they just went through this with a situation where the buyer passed away and had 11 kids. So yeah, dealing with an estate with 11 kids is a mess. Frankly, dealing with an estate with one kid can be a mess. And dealing with that many, I had a financial advisor the other day, and he said he had some new clients that came in, and he asked him, he said, well, do y'all have any kids? And they said, well, yeah, we've got 4 kids. And he said, oh, yeah, which one of them's a problem? And they said, well, how did you know? And he's like, because you got more than one. If you got more than one of them's going to be a problem.
But, and especially the situation with the commenter with the 11 kids, those 11 kids, they may have no idea what the financial arrangements are on that house. And they think that mama owns it or promise. So you just never know. And then so you're battling their understandings and it's a mess. So.
Yeah, and then inevitably they'll go get some lawyer that doesn't know anything about any of it either.
Right.
And then you've got the blind leading the blind and greed and grief and all of these other things. That's why you do some planning at this is to hopefully avoid some of these ordeals.
Yeah, I do see a lot of contract for deed in our area, and where the seller basically still owns the property, and the buyer is going to pay rent for 10 years until and then if they paid their rent for 10 years, the deed is signed over to them.
There have been a few law changes related to those to protect buyers here recently, but that's definitely, you need to explore all of those different options out there just to figure out the best way to protect yourself, as with anything.
Well, and of course, one of the other deals is not just financing, but that buyer, are you requiring them to keep insurance on the property? Who's paying the taxes? I mean, those kind of things kind of come into play as well.
Yep. Well, it looks like we got about
a minute.
Yeah, about 50 seconds before we're back live on the radio. So thanks for sticking around and watching the program. We appreciate it. And we'll get back to our radio listeners here shortly.
I think Facebook folks, they've kind of got an advantage. They can just...
Yeah, all they got to do is type. They don't have to pick up the phone and try to call in or anything. Plus, if on there, everybody gets to hear it. When the people call, the people on Facebook can't hear the callers. We just haven't.
We have to repeat that.
We haven't figured out how to make that part work yet. So, all right, we got 15 seconds. So let's get back live on the radio. And I'll bring it in.
Have a question? Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
Welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. This is your host, John Ross, here live in the studio with Lisa Schulmeyer. If you have any questions, you can just call 903-793-1071. You can also reach out to us on Facebook Live. It's over at the Ross and Schulmeyer Facebook page, where you can check us out. You can make comments. You can see what it looks like to make radio.
Make the sausage. That's right. So today we're talking about wills as a tool, and I think for the first part of the show, John, probably our listeners and our watchers have figured out real quick that we're not big fans of the last will and testament.
And again, I don't want people to get the impression that what we're saying is that you don't need you shouldn't have a will. What we're saying is that you shouldn't use the will as your primary planning vehicle.
Right.
And so first of all, you got to understand what does it take to have a valid will? Well, it basically takes two things. The first is you got to die.
Right. So a will means nothing completely meaningless as long as you're breathing.
Now, some of y'all probably laughing and saying, "Yeah, no kidding, John, Lisa. We're not stupid." But I guarantee I will have somebody walk into my office next week that'll say something about.
Daddy's will says I get the 40 acre over here, and then you ask, "Well, when did Daddy pass away?" And he's still alive. He's still alive. And so we say, Daddy can do anything he wants with his 40 acres while he's breathing. So will is nothing.
Yeah, so step 1, you got to die. Step 2, you have to probate a will in order to make the will valid. There is no such thing as a valid unprobated will.
Right. Still just a piece of paper.
That's right. All right, well, we've got, looks like we've got a caller on the line. Let's see if we can get them on. All right, caller, you're on Aging Insight.
Oh, yeah. Right. That's right. Well, right. Right. Yeah, no, so our caller was talking about that, on TV and movies. Yeah, that's all you hear are wills, and I remember that show Dallas. I think they did a reading of the will in Dallas. He pointed out that when
when they shot JR.
No, that was not when they shot JR. But when the patriarch, mystery. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, see they. Oh yeah, you gotta like Larry Hagman. He did a great JR. So yes, they used it as a dramatic device, and so like you say, TV watchers, there's a will, and that's how you do this. And here you have this Ewing family that had all this oil, and they used a will, and that's crazy. So
well, and like you said in the TV show, they're opening the will before Dad dies to see what it says. So and JR's like, yeah, thank you, Daddy. That's but in reality though, that the will is not yet valid because the guy's still alive, and it's not even going to be valid until it goes through the complete probate process.
Yeah. Sue Ellen gets this. Yes. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. No, John, I think if there really was a thing called reading of the wills, we'd have to hire security.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I don't want all them people, all those mad people in my office
that's
together.
That's too much drama. So for a will to even be valid, so even if the will is the document that's being used, it's got to, the testator has to die, and the will has to be offered for probate at the courthouse. So until then, it's just a piece of paper that is just as meaningless as last month's electric bill.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it looks like we may have another caller on the line. So caller, you're on Aging Insight.
Yep. Sure.
No.
Uh-huh. So the question is if you're trying to qualify for Medicaid, say for nursing home care, and you've got a life insurance policy that has cash value, is that going to be a factor in all of this? And so basically, if you're for Medicaid purposes, they don't count a home, they don't count a car, they don't count prepaid burial arrangements, but everything else they count. And so including the cash value of, now the death benefit they don't count, but any amount of that policy that you could pull out while you're alive, they do count. A lot of times when we run into this pretty regular, there's usually several different things that can be done even in an emergency kind of situation. For example, if the person hasn't already paid for the funeral, then we can assign the life insurance policy to the funeral home. And now, instead of it being a life insurance policy, it becomes prepaid funeral, and that doesn't count against you. And you could do that the day before you went to the nursing home. No big deal. So I wouldn't be too worried about the life insurance. We always, and that's just one example. We can always deal with those sort of things. What I would say though is make sure that the people around you, the people that are going to be helping you, have access to that information. We've had a lot of kids, and mom's had a stroke or whatever, and we'll ask, well, does she have any life insurance? And they say, well, we just don't know. Or they say, no, we don't think so. And 3 months into it, we find a policy, and now we've got a problem. So yeah, get you a list that has all of that stuff in it. All right. Well, did that answer your question? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, that just goes to show you, John. Calling in with a question about life insurance. I mean, there's so many puzzle pieces to all of this, and one thing to remember about life insurance versus a will is that life insurance money, the death benefit, so long as you've assigned a beneficiary, then those funds go directly to the beneficiary. And a will doesn't control the life proceeds anyway.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's kind of what we were talking about there. Is that, the will doesn't do necessarily what you think it's going to do. And so, like this lady talked about that, it sounded like I had actually set up for her where her home or other real estate would pass, but with right of survivorship, which means that there's multiple owners to a piece of property. And when one of those owners dies, it just automatically then belongs to the surviving joint owners.
Yes, under the law, it automatically belongs to those owners. Our title companies need some education in that area.
But the whole point there is that that's an instantaneous transfer at death. That
doesn't have to go through that will or that probate process.
Right, and so if the only asset that you have is, or your biggest asset really is that home, like a lady like this, for example, she might have some money in the bank, she might have an IRA, she's got some life insurance, all of which you can name a beneficiary on.
Right. So what do we need a will for?
Right. Well, then the only other asset then is the house. And if you do things like a transfer on death deed, a beneficiary deed, a right of survivorship deed, a ladybird deed, all of these are ways to
create a living trust.
A revocable trust. There's lots of different ways that you could transfer that asset without having to go through the process of somebody hiring an attorney, going to the courthouse, getting appointed as the executor, and going through the process.
6-10 months of process.
And civil costs.
Yeah.
They put the lawsuit.
Yes, well,
that just shows I got an hour round trip.
And for the farmers and the days that
they increase the cost for the people out there, and especially if you start talking about being in a big city like Dallas or Houston or something. You take whatever you think that probate might cost in Bowie County, and if you're in
triple it.
Yeah, if you're in Dallas County, you might as well triple it, quadruple it. It's outrageous. So we got to take one more break. When we come back, we'll finish up our discussion. Stick around. We'll be right back.
For John or Lisa, call 903
It's amazing how fast these little segments go.
I know, there's so much you want to get to.
Yeah, I feel like we're
waiting.
More we need to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing that we hate often is when we've got those people that are coming in after the whole deal's all over. And then they thought the will was going to do something. And then we get to be the bad guys and tell them why what they thought is not right. We get to be the bearers of the bad news.
Well, especially when they had their family attorney forever and ever, and they thought it was going to work this way, and now there's a Medicaid lien, and there's all kinds of problems, and it is rough.
Oh, yeah. Allergies. Everything is yellow. Yeah. I don't know if y'all can see the flashy light.
That's our telephone.
That's our telephone light. But we've only got 20 seconds, so I can't answer that call. So we got to wait for that to come back on the radio here. All right. 10 seconds until we're back live on the radio.
Phone 903-793-1071. Now back to Aging Insight with John and Lisa.
Well, welcome back, everyone. This is Lisa Scholmeyer here with John Ross. You're listening to Aging Insight. We're here every Saturday, and we're a live program. So if you do have a question, give us a call. And I know we had a call during our break, so it looks like they've called us back. So, caller, you're on Aging Insight. What can we do for you? Yes. Yes. Perfect. We were definitely going to do that. So we'll answer your question if you just hang up the line, and we'll go on that. And if you need some more clarification, you just buzz us right back. All right. So our caller had the question of, we had kind of mentioned that maybe hospitals or, other people can get property that passed through a will before it ever goes to the beneficiaries. And so the caller wanted to know a little more about that.
Yeah, so if you die and you owe anybody money, whether we're talking about hospital bills, whether we're talking about
Credit
cards, or the big one that we see out there, and that's nursing home care. If you go to a nursing home, you can have a home worth up to $500,000, and so what? But the money the state pays for you, they want to get paid back when you die. And so going to a nursing home and qualifying for Medicaid is just like racking up a credit card bill.
Right, yeah. So it's part of the probate process. We talked about, you have to be deceased, the will has to be offered for probate, but the reason your beneficiaries can't get your property immediately as part of this probate process is because we are required by law to inform any and all possible creditors that you have died and you have an estate and there's a will that's been admitted to the probate process, and all creditors are invited. And in fact, we send them a personal invitation, a notice to the creditor.
Have to. Not because we want to, but because we have
to file their claims against the estate. And so what happens is there's a waiting period of 90 to 120 days where all of these creditors can file their claims and say, oh, wait, Miss Johnson had an outstanding bill with us, and the credit card, she had an outstanding bill with us, and so at the end of this notice period, we have to look at all the creditors who have submitted their claims, and if they are determined to be valid claims, then assets from your estate must be used to satisfy those valid claims before your beneficiaries ever get a dime of your estate. And all of that has to be done. There's a statutory framework that we have to use. And so part of that statutory framework says that any expenses related to your last illness, such as a hospital bill, doctor bills, nursing home bills, those bills,
Those get paid first.
Those get paid first. So that's what we're talking about. That your estate could be going in large part to something like a hospital.
But the point is that if the asset itself doesn't go through that probate process, then it's not subject to those claims.
Right. It's not subject to any of these rules about creditors.
That's right. So, for example, if I had been in a nursing home and I racked up a $50,000 bill and I had a house and I had willed that house to my kids, for example, well, then when I die, Medicaid's going to take that house. They're going to sell it off, and then if there's any money left, then my kids are going to get it because the house went through probate. On the other hand, if I had set that house up so it went outside of probate, so
just through that joint with right of survivorship deed,
through that right of survivorship, or through a transfer on death deed, or through a ladybird deed, there are ways that I could transfer that home outside of the probate process to where even though I owed Medicaid $10,000 or $50,000 at my death, they still can't take the house.
Yeah, they can't take the house, so your beneficiaries actually get that property. So, and most folks, a lot of people tell us, well, I don't have any creditors, and my friend Joe Bob up the street, who's, been our family lawyer, says a will is easy, and, all this other stuff is just some fancy, schmancy, hocus pocus, I guess. But I was getting there. And a lot of people don't have any creditors or bills in their senior years because they've been, they've paid off a mortgage, they don't run up credit cards. But, illness and aging sometimes brings its own financial challenges, and including bills. And so...
And the whole point is you're never, ever, ever, never plan for what you hope happens. You don't plan based on, well, you know what, today I'm healthy, I'm happy, I have enough money that's going to last me. As long as everything stays the way it is today, it's going to go exactly the way I want. That's what you hope for. But it is not. It is the exact opposite of what you plan for. Right. And so when somebody looks at your situation and they say, oh, wait a second, today you're healthy, you have all your bills paid, and you've got a couple of great kids that are all well married, living, financially stable, and not disabled. And so you don't need anything fancy. That is baloney. That person is lying to you. They're saying that you don't need anything today. But if they think that they can see what your future is,
or your children's future,
and they're not whipping out some tarot cards in the process or something,
crystal ball.
Yeah, looking in their crystal ball. That's the whole point, is you have no idea what the future holds. You may not owe anybody the moment before your death. I was driving back from Dallas yesterday, my daughter's soccer game, and that stretch of highway between Mount Pleasant and Texarkana, it's a little dark, it's a little lonely out there, and it was about 11 o'clock, and I could feel myself being a little sleepy. Now, I wasn't too bad. I'd had a soda, and I was doing pretty good. If you fell asleep driving, if you caused a car wreck that killed you and somebody else, you may not have owed anybody the moment before your death, but your death has created a debt that's going to be significant. The wrongful death lawsuit.
Right.
And that wrongful death lawsuit, if you're planning with a will, the plaintiff in that lawsuit is now your primary beneficiary.
That's right, because they're going to file against the will and just say, hey, we have a judgment. They owe us a bunch of money for the death of our loved one, and
and I've never. I don't know about you, Lisa, but in 15 years, I've never had anybody walk into my office and say, you know, I want everything to my 3 kids, unless, of course, I get into a car wreck and my estate gets sued. In which case, I don't want anything going to my 3 kids. I want it all to go to this strange plaintiff and their attorney who's taking 40% off the top.
Yeah, we've never drafted a provision like that in the bill.
I've never drafted one that says something like that. I've also never had somebody say, well, yeah, John, I want it all to go to my 3 kids, unless I go to a nursing home, in which case, I really want the state to get my assets.
Yeah, to get the assets I worked a lifetime for, pay my mortgage off, pay my taxes, raise my kids. Yeah, that's not what we hear.
Yeah, now, so and the thing is that if you're planning with the will, what you're planning for is that everything is going to go smooth and easy, and there'll be no complications, and that you don't mind the fact that after your death, your beneficiaries are going to have to spend a lot of time and money trying to
settle your affairs.
If that's your goal, great.
Yeah, as attorneys, many attorneys love a simple will because they know they get to charge a lot of money for that probate.
Yeah, I've had an attorney in this town tell me that the reason he liked doing wills was because he got to bill the person twice, one when they were alive and once when they died.
Yeah,
and so
that's a little repugnant.
It is. There's a reason that attorneys have some of those attorneys have bad reputations out there. But I guess the whole point is just get it out of your mind that the will is the be all end all.
Yeah. The will is not the magic document. It is a tool in the toolbox. I really like that analogy. It is simply one tool in the toolbox, and frankly, John, it's one of those weird metric half-size tools that we don't have to reach into the toolbox for too often.
Yeah.
But you may have it in there just in case.
That's right. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a will. That even if you have planned your estate in a way, let's say that you've used a revocable trust, a living trust, or an asset protection trust, or something like that as a way to shield your assets while you're alive, maybe, or protect those assets, transfer them at death without going through probate. We would anticipate that you didn't need a will because everything is going to pass outside of probate. But there's always the chance that something could slip through the cracks.
Right.
My grandfather, in my own situation, my grandfather, years after he died, we discovered mineral rights that we just didn't even know existed.
Right.
When you discover mineral rights, long after the person's dead, we cannot resurrect them and have them name a beneficiary. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, once again, we've reached the end of another program.
The show. We want to give a special thanks to our sponsors: Edgewood Manor, the Barnett Agency, Derrickson Memorial Hospice, Riverview Behavioral, Calhoun Creek Estates, Kurt Green, St. Michael's Hospital, Red River Federal Credit Union, Twin City Rehab, and Inspirations.
That's right. And thanks to everybody who's listening. If there was something else you wanted to check out, of course, the Facebook Live program is actually recorded on Facebook, and you can watch it at any time, and you can now watch prior episodes. So be sure to check us out. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
And we'll see y'all next week, too.